Hi friends, Tracy here from the Sewing Channel. Welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome. I've taken all of the guesswork out of this 3-hour fat quarter quilt just for you. Oh yes, I said 3-hour quilt, and this is from start to absolute finish. And this is a big quilt too. It's about a queen size of a quilt, and it is drapey and soft and cuddly. I mean, there's nothing worse than trying to cuddle up with a quilt that's too small for you and it's stiff and hard. This is not one of those quilts. This is a winner. I went as far as to make time slots for every step of this quilt so you know exactly what step it is and how long it's going to take you to do it. Even though I go over everything in this video, I will also put all of that information of the time slotting in the description box, and you can find that below this video. Click the button that says show more. I'm an average quilter, so if you're a beginner, it may take you longer, and if you're advanced, you may be done quicker than 3 hours. Enough talking already. Let the timer begin. This 3-hour quilt takes 10 fat quarters. One of the fat quarters needs to be a solid color for negative space. I chose a white negative space and 9 Christmas printed fat quarters. Fat quarters tend to be a little wonky in the sides and on the edges because of the way they're cut, I guess. I'm not sure. So we need to make sure that we trim all of them up the same. The best way I found to trim fat quarters is to lay 3 together and lay the salvage edges, if they're showing, all together as evenly as possible, and then trim that off and then go from there and use that straight edge to trim the rest. Next, take all of your trimmed fat quarters and fold them in half and give them a finger press, open them back up, and then cut them right down the middle. I didn't add the prep work into the 3-hour mark because I figured this is something where you could prep it, set it aside, and then when you're ready, you can just go for it. Cut your sashing strips to the sizes you see here on the screen. Now you can see here I have a snowflake print and a hollyberry print. That's because I ran out of the snowflake, so I had to go back to the store and all they had was hollyberry, so it is what it is. Now it's time to connect the horizontal rows. You're going to connect the blocks with the sashing. I've marked it in red there what each row looks like, but all 4 rows, connecting them horizontally, will take you about 1 hour and 20 minutes. I should also mention that you might want to lay out your pieces where you would like them to sit on your quilt, or you can do them random. It's totally up to you. I took the one end of my horizontal row and I put 2 sashings on both sides of it. And then also on the other end, I did that as well. And then I just connected the blocks consecutively. It is more efficient to put them all right sides together at your table and pin them and then take them by rows to your sewing machine to sew that 1/4 inch seam right down the sides. I think you'll be so amazed at how quickly this quilt comes together. I really think I like the idea of knowing how much time is involved in a quilt before I jump head first. How about you? Let me know down in the comments below. After you've pinned the side sashing onto your blocks, you're going to take it to the sewing machine and sew that 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down each side, connecting the entire row together. And you'll do this with all 4 of those rows. After you have all of the horizontal rows connected, you're going to press. Now I pressed my seams open. It's up to you how you would like to do it. At the end of the 1 hour and 20 minutes or so, you should have all 4 rows done, sewn and pressed. I've even included the trimming of these rows into that time amount. And here you see me just trimming off that extra white because I did make mine a little bit longer on the edges, just because I know I need that wiggle room, because sometimes I've made some really big mistakes and had to trim my stuff way back down. So I've learned. You can see here in this screenshot that I've outlined in red that long piece of sashing that was about 65 inches length and 2.5 inches wide. You'll have 5 pieces of sashing that you'll need to connect at this time, and you'll do the same as before. Put right sides together and pin at your table, and then we're going to take it to the sewing machine and do that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And after you're done with that 1/4 inch seam allowance, you will press your seams open or to the side, however you like to do it, and then you'll grab the next piece and connect it to that sashing, and consecutively do it until all pieces are attached. At this point in the project, your quilt top should be pretty big, and you'll notice it just keeps growing and growing. It is such a large quilt. I love it. And this whole process, connecting all of that long sashing to the rows, takes only 1 hour, and that includes pressing and trimming. You can't beat that, right? My quilt top's finished size was approximately 80 inches by 62 inches. That is an awesomely sized large quilt. I love it. It's about a queen size if you look up the measurements. You can choose a plush or a minky for the backing. You can go to a fabric store or you can order it online, however you would like. I actually purchased my plush blanket at the Dollar General for $20. It was a great buy, and it was 90 inches by 90 inches. It was perfect for this quilt project. I laid my quilt top down on the floor with right side facing up. Then I laid my plush blanket right side facing down, so right sides were together. Make sure we get our seams right. You need to have that minky or plush hanging about 4 inches off to the sides of that entire quilt top. So that's going to be overhang of the plush. And then you're going to put pins around all of the outer edge. And then sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way around the entire blanket, leaving an opening on one of the straight edges so we can turn our work. The pinning and sewing around the entire edge should only take about 10 minutes. And after that's sewn and you've left that opening, you're going to take it to your table and you're going to cut off all of that excess yardage, that extra 4 inches or so that was around the entire quilt top. Being sure not to slice into your quilt top though. The reason I put the minky on top of the quilt top on the floor was because the minky or the plush, it's much easier to spread with your hands so you don't get any puckering or whatnot in the end. And as I'm sewing right here, as you can see, I do not take any of the pins out until I get to the table for cutting. Here I'm at my cutting table and I'm just slicing off all of that excess. And you see here I'm taking the pins off as I go now. And I'm also going to show you here a little trick. As you cut around that opening right there where you're going to turn your work, leave a little bit extra like I did. It's much easier to sew that shut in the end if you have a little bit more of a flap there. Now it's time to turn our 3-hour quilt right side out. And here you can see that opening. I'm trying to just finger press and fold that inward, and you see that minky part went in really nice because of the way we cut it. And then we're going to sew a top stitch around that entire edge, tacking all of the minky and the cotton quilt top together. It only took me about 10 minutes or so to top stitch around the entire quilt. You're going to sew about a 1/4 inch from the edge, and you just want to make sure when you do this step that you roll that edge out as far as it will go so that you don't get like a pucker within the edge. So you just want to be mindful that it's an even stitch all the way around the entire quilt, I guess. So hopefully when you go to do this step, you'll kind of know what I mean. I also wanted you to notice that I do have my walking foot on the entire project. And if you have one, go ahead and put yours on. I don't think that it's really needed if you just take your time and go at a nice pace. But the walking foot just helped me go a little quicker, I think, because it has to go through a lot of layers. The top stitching took me about 10 minutes. Take a look at the nice edge. I like it. It looks really nice. I like the way that it bound it all together. Now on to finish this quilt. In order to tie it off, I'm going to put some pins where I would like it to be tied off with the pieces of yarn. Now yours could be more or less than this. I kind of went a little overkill on mine, I think. But anyways, you put your pins there and then you grab your yarn. I used 100% cotton in like a off-white color, and my strands were too large to fit through my quilt top, so I separated them into two pieces, as you can see right there, and then put it through a larger eye of a needle, and then I weaved it through on the spots that I wanted to tie my quilt. Now you just want to make sure that you grab both the layers here, and I just did like a crisscross design right there. Very small though, you don't need to take a lot, otherwise you'll pucker the fabric. And you just can trim it right there. So I left a long tail on my needle so that way I could do a few at a time without having to get more thread. And then I just tied it into a knot. So I tied it twice and then trimmed it down to the size that I wanted. I found that I could do 3 different tie-offs and it only took me 1 minute for 3. Go ahead, it's your turn now. You can do a 3-hour fat quarter quilt. I know you can. Until next time on the Sewing Channel, take care.